coach, what do you think about this step? Or, hey, coach, can you watch a couple extra clips with me? Like, he's a kid who he'll give himself a chance regardless of what he looks like athletically because of the fact that I think he wants to be great. He's been really good in terms of his athletic ability. I think you can see on his high school tape that he's a really athletic kid, raw in certain areas, but is a willing participant in everything that we do. And just came in, I think, with more of a workman's attitude. You can tell he's somewhat of a mature kid and has handled his business the right way. And that's really Markeith. I think, to be quite honest, that Markeith has about as much upside as a coach can ask for, being that he does have the blanket tools. But the fact that he's raw allows you to really build him rather than have to fix the issues that may be at hand, you know. But he's been great. He's been really good.
I mean, I know you've been a part of a couple, big time recruiting operations, come from Georgia and all this stuff. But just kind of, you've been here, 6 months now. Just what have you just taken away from this whole experience? Like, what this looks like in terms of just how it looks at other places.
At other places,
where it gets done. Georgia, you guys are in the national championship.
Right.
How does the vision, the plan of just making this a legit recruiting operation. Compare, or is it on the right trajectory? I guess.
Yeah. Definitely. I think the one thing that is glaring when you see this staff recruit is the energy, the genuine energy. And I think a lot of times, and this is not a dig at any staff or any program, but just in general within our profession, I think a lot of times, there are guys who aren't necessarily overly fired up about recruiting, and although they can put on kind of a fake hat, eventually it kind of shows through, whether it be inconsistency, whether it be lack of juice, whether it be not being in the know on the latest, right? Those aren't things that are happening here. One thing Mario Cristobal is going to do is he's going to set the bar, and he's going to outwork all of the guys that he's already employed. And our jobs as his employees is to outwork him, and so it's competitive, even within the staff, on how well we can do in terms of cultivating relationships, in terms of communicating consistently, in terms of IDing and going after the right guys. All that stuff is a real thing here, and they're doing a hell of a job with this as far.
Just when you're looking at guys on tape, whether it be safety, corner, or anything like that, is there what are you kind of looking for? What's kind of these some key tells that you're just okay, this guy can play at Miami, or this guy can do it, or how do you kind of what are just maybe some of the things you're looking for when you're watching some of these kids, whether it be interacting with them in person,
right.
Characteristics and all that
right.
stuff, and just what they put out there?
You're always looking for general athleticism. I think speed kills, and so the first thing that you're trying to ID is how fast and how just overall athletic is this kid. The one thing that I know is if we're wanting to play in the college football playoff, and you're wanting to be one of those 4 teams at the top, or you're wanting to be those last 2 teams at the top, you're gonna have to play some real talent on the outside. So when I'm looking, I want speed. I want guys that can run at all 4 positions. I don't want the old school slug safety that just wants to hit and doesn't want to cover. That can't work here. So general athleticism is going to be, although that might sound like a coaching cop-out, that's probably the biggest thing. From that, man, it comes down to, there's a whole algorithm of things, right? You're looking at the intangibles. What do they do that they're not coached to do that they just happen to do naturally, right? That's the first thing, because we all love erasers, right? The second thing is really just overall production. How often are they at the ball? I watch games from the end zone copy, and I like to call it the camera club. I want to see how many times that guy shows up in that end zone copy of that film, because that shows me he's around the ball, and guys that get around the ball, good things happen. So that's the second thing, the effort piece. The third thing is probably just the general football. I don't want to say knowledge because it's my job to teach it, but just football feel, just being a football player in general. I think that's one thing that's understated, and we lose track of it. We worry about testing numbers so much that we forget, the kid's ability to actually go out and make a play is at the end of the day the be all end all. And so those are the things that you want to see on tape. Specifically at certain positions, corners you may want a certain skill set, safeties you may want a certain skill set. But really for me, all 4 positions, whether it be free safety, strong safety, and both corner positions, all have to have very similar skill sets. Your safeties may just be a little bit bigger and more willing in terms of the physicality piece of the game, but everything else should be about the same. Run, hit, cover, so on and so forth.
how close do you feel like this roster is to maybe where it should be, or maybe where you guys want it to be?
We work with the head coach who's always pressing forward, so I don't know that it'll ever be where he wants it to be. I do know that we are on the right track. I do think that we have had some really good pieces in place when we walked into the building. I think there are some places where we're not as great, and we need to fill in those roles. No slight on the staff that was here before us. You know, I'm not one of those guys that wants to pass the blame on to the next, right? But we're running different things, doing different things, and maybe may want different guys in certain positions based on what we're looking for skill set wise. But you know, we're working.
It seems like you got some guys, maybe a few guys that could play safety and corner. We saw Al kind of rotate things. Do you feel like you have got some guys that you feel like they can do different things in some different roles?
Yeah, definitely. We have a good group of guys. I think there's guys like Al Blades, I think that you mentioned, and really most of our upperclassmen that have played multiple positions since we've been here, and even played multiple positions prior to us coming. I think anytime that you do more than one thing, it adds to your value, right? And that's just, you know, life really in general. We have a few guys that could be jack of all trades, or guys that we move or dual train between two different positions. But in terms of the general feel of the group, you try to keep it to where guys are playing one position and allow them to learn the intricacies and the details and everything that go along with that specific position. And then from there, build on that, right? So we've got maybe one or two guys that are dual trading, but for the most part, everybody's locked in on one position and making sure that they get the details on that portion of things. Yeah.
And you're obviously still getting to know these guys, but they're coming in with a lot of experience. Where here, other schools, you've got a group of guys that have played football before.
Right.
Does that feel good as a coach that you've got guys that are experienced and that you can, you know, just kind of going into a year?
You do. It does make you feel good. I will say this. The only thing that it really does for you is let you know that they've been in that arena before. You know, that they've been in front of a bigger crowd, and at the moment will not be, for lack of a better term, too big for them. You know, because at the end of the day, I'm going to ask them to do different things than what they were asked to do last year and the year before and the year before. So the skill set piece isn't necessarily, you know, not something that you lean on in terms of prior experience, but the mental aspect, you know, the preparation aspect, all those things. For sure, a guy who's done it before, it makes you feel more comfortable having him in that spot, for sure.
And I know, you know, you teach a lot technique, the whole thing, there's a lot, and then the result sometimes can be an interception or just getting hands on the ball.
Right.
This group there's not a lot of guys with a lot of picks in their careers or anything like that. Do you feel like that can change? Do you feel like, or just getting hands on the ball, or how do you kind of view that? Because I know there's a lot of other things that go into being a quality DB, you know, I mean, that's just their big stat, you know.
As you stated, that production is lacked, right? And so I guess that's why I have a job, is to try to heighten that, to try to bring more picks, try to go to get the ball back. And so that's what our general outset is as a defensive staff. I think it starts with more than just the kid. I think it starts with more than just the specific defensive back coach. So that's no slight on even the last guy that was in here. Sometimes schematically what you're doing doesn't necessarily lend for those opportunities as much as some others. We like to think that we're doing a good job of putting together a game plan that allows us and is favorable with us putting our hands on the ball. Now the kids are going to have to execute. They're going to have to execute at a high level, right? And then they're going to have to finish when they have those opportunities. So it's multifaceted and there's layers to it. But I can promise you that at every single chance we get, we are trying to heighten the awareness of taking the ball back from the offense. Yes.
And your philosophy, I touched on guys' experience. You've got different guys to kind of choose from. Your philosophy, would you like to use multiple guys in a game if you can? Would you like to kind of elevate your top guys? How do you?
Yeah, you don't win. You don't win. You get fired, right? So we like winning way too much to not, and like keeping our jobs way too much to not play the best guys. I always tell guys, if you're good enough to win with, you'll be in a rotation. For me as a coach, I'm always about having three corners that I feel really good about. If there's a fourth, you know, you're really cooking with some hot grease. And the safety, just the way the physicality of the game is and how many reps you're taking and so on and so forth, there's also some rotational stuff in there as well. You don't rotate the safeties as much as you do corners, but that can also be a thing. The one thing that we do is we get into sub packages, and so we'll get into some nickels and we'll get into some dime packages, which adds an extra DB or two. right, to the field at one time, which allows you to utilize your room holistically. And so, you know, right now, again, we're getting a lot of mileage out of our room, being that guys, if not rotationally, are getting in. They're also sub-package players.
Thank you.